This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
You are now listening to the Dynasty Rewind.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dynasty Rewind. I'm your host, Michael Bauer, the best in the business, once again back in business, joined as always by my faithful co-host, Nate, the Professor Christian. Nate, hello and welcome back. We're in our normal setups this week.
We are back in our separate rooms, a state apart. We got Delaware in between us, I guess, kind of, if you take the 95 corridor up. So, but I miss you, Mike. I do, but I have D-Hop now, so I'm pretty happy about it.
You do.
33-year-old D-Hop, going to be a really good wide receiver 3 for the Ravens.
That's amazing that they signed DeAndre Hopkins. So,
you guys got Barkley for another couple years. Really making moves, Eagles and Ravens.
Yeah, the Eagles did make a trade today that I'm not very happy about. They traded away their safety, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who is kind of like he brings a swagger to the defense. They sent him for a guard that got benched last year and a mid-round draft pick. So
yeah, I did find that trade interesting.
The speculation is there's possibly some non-on-the-field issues, but one of the guys on the Eagles podcast I listened to pointed out he made a lot of good plays, but when he wasn't making big plays, he could be somewhat of a liability. I can see that.
Yeah.
So still hate to see him go. Best of luck to you in Houston, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Also, the Texans, man, they're
best of luck to C.J. Stroud, as they've basically traded away his offensive line, and that was the main problem for him last year. So I'm not sure what they're doing down there in Houston.
I do like the Christian Kirk trade, though. I think that's going to be good for him.
Yep.
Tank Dell might be a nice little buy low if you could buy him low. If you got some space on your IR that you could stash him for a year, I would love to get my hands on Tank Dell. Maybe Tank Dell's a guy. Oh, no, you can't trade an injured player. So,
yeah, sure. In real life, you're saying?
Yes. Also,
yeah.
I do want to say, I believe you and I were incorrect about something previously on this podcast. If a first-round draft pick is traded, the team that receives that player can exercise their 5th-year option.
Okay.
Yeah. I just found out about that today, so I wanted to come on here and let you guys know we were incorrect about that. Nate, you had said that they can't. I agreed with you because it sounded right, and I thought that they couldn't as well, but they can. So
you learn something new every day.
You do learn something new.
And I feel like I've learned a lot about the NFL, but there's still a lot of little rules. Like I think we all learned just this past year that once you trade a player, you can't trade back for him for at least a year or two.
It's like, I think it's 2 years because that was the whole Hassan Reddick situation.
Pretty sure I was doing that in Madden years ago.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. No matter how much football we actually watch, there always seems to be a new nuance that just comes up out of nowhere. Like the hip drop tackle is illegal unless you play for the Kansas City Chiefs, in which case it's perfectly legal to do.
I will say I did know about the rule that came up in the playoffs where refs can actually give a touchdown. It's actually there's actually a similar rule, I believe, in soccer, where if you're a defender and you smack the ball as it's going into the goal, like it's obvious handball, obviously a red card, it's a penalty kick, but they could also just allow the goal.
Yeah. Before we get started, we're going to do some, I guess, early tampering period reactions, however you want to quantify it. There's one deal that I wanted to talk about quickly before we get into it, Nate. And Sam Darnold, 3 years, $100 million to the Seattle Seahawks. They traded away Geno Smith to the Raiders, which I actually think, him going there with Pete Carroll, I think that's going to be some stability at that situation for the quarterback situation for the Raiders. I actually like the move for both teams, to be honest with you. And this tells you, hey, it's J.J. McCarthy time, because then Daniel Jones goes to the Colts. So he's no longer in Minnesota.
What an interesting quarterback room.
Yeah, and and by the way, the two least efficient quarterbacks last year were Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson.
You know what they say, Mike? If you have two quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks.
Yeah. So which quarterback room is worse, the Giants or the Colts? That's not very nice of me. But I'm interested, so we now have Sam Darnold going to Seattle. They trade away DK Metcalf. They had released Tyler Lockett, which I didn't agree with releasing Tyler Lockett, especially then when you go and you trade away DK Metcalf. So it's JSN, wide receiver 1, full go for Seattle. They're going to have to sign a free agent, and it might be more of like a mid-level free agent, and they're going to have to draft somebody, but it's going to be interesting. So, I mean, good on you, Sam Darnold. You're getting the bag. He showed that he can play last year. It just shows that, RIP Justin Fields, because we see what happens to quarterbacks when they play for the Jets. I don't know if I'm going to try to buy JSN right now, though. I just think he's going to cost too much.
That, and also I'm not excited about the Seahawks offense. I think losing Metcalf, losing Lockett. I like Sam Darnold. I think he's done a good job of himself of coming back, but I don't think that Sam Darnold's too much of an upgrade over Geno Smith. Yeah. Remember, Sam Darnold was playing in possibly one of the most quarterback-friendly teams in the NFL last year between Kevin O'Connell, the offense that they have surrounding him with Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, thank you.
And TJ
Hawkinson. It's a very good situation for a quarterback. Seahawks do not look to be that. Their offensive line is not as good. They're down to one true wide receiver. I do like Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet there in the backfield, but obviously you're getting a lot younger from Geno to going over to Sam, but I'm not a huge fan of that for fantasy purposes. I'm interested to see what happens, but I'm not super optimistic. I do like this for the Raiders, though. I like Geno going over there. We got Jacoby Myers, who's always a stud. We got Brock Bowers. Raiders seem like one of the favorite teams to to draft a running back. There's been a lot of hype about the Raiders picking up Genty. So we'll see if that happens. Also, I think there's a lot of hype around the Bears picking up Genty with all of their offensive line moves. I'm pretty excited about the Bears, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. And then I'll talk about the Jets too, more than I should probably in the rest of this podcast. But I think there's been a lot of fun, quote unquote, signings so far. They're not actually signed yet. They're just agreed to deals until free agency tomorrow. A sleeper deal that I like is Juwan Johnson being re-signed for a 3-year deal in New Orleans. Juwan Johnson, always a very serviceable tight end. Might not be a tight end 1, but I truly think that he's one of the better values as a tight end 2 on your team, and you probably can get him for tight end 3 prices. He's always pretty consistent and usually finds the end zone more often than not.
I will say this, though, just looking at it, Seattle Seahawks, I looked it up. I wasn't sure who their head coach was. Forgive me, everyone. It is Mike McDonald. He's a defensive guy.
Defensive coordinator for the Ravens. He was great. I'm so sad that we lost him.
But do you know who their offensive coordinator is?
I certainly did at one point. It was last year. It was, I believe his name is Grubb. He was the former Washington offensive coordinator when they had Michael Penix Jr., but I'm not sure who it is at the moment.
It's Clint Kubiak.
Clint Kubiak.
Yes. if you recall, he was the offensive coordinator of the Saints last year. They got off to that hot start. Now, that team fell apart, no fault in Kubiak's, but you give him that traditional pocket quarterback, a good running game, which Seattle, should have again this year with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. A little bit of a 1-2 punch up there in the Pacific Northwest. Who do they have? Who's their starting tight end? Noah Fant. Okay,
Noah Fant.
Yeah. So look, the cupboard is empty right now. They're going to go grocery shopping up there in Seattle. So we're going to see how free agency plays out for them. That was the big noticeable deal for me. Good on you, Sam Darnold. And look, eating some crow here. He proved me long last year. Dude can still play.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. All right. You ready to get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right, Nate. So early free agency reactions here. Who is the first player you want to buy right now?
Yeah, I want to buy Breece Hall. He is one of the top running backs on my list and currently RB6 when keep trade cut, but his value continues to decrease over the offseason. It's on a downward trend. You look there, they have like the values as like you're looking at stocks, and it's just going down. It's going down for the past couple months, continues to go down. I don't think a lot of people are excited about Justin Fields going to the Jets. There's rumors that they're still going to be looking to draft a quarterback because, hey, they only gave Justin they didn't give him that much money, whereas like, hey, you're the new face of the franchise. They're like, hey, we're going to give you a good chance here, but they didn't necessarily close the door on drafting a quarterback or bringing somebody else in for competition. Now, I will say Justin Fields did reportedly not want to sign with the Steelers because they wanted to be committed to as the quarterback one. So maybe the Jets did give him that, but hey, we know NFL teams will do whatever they need to do at the end of the day, and they will not keep promises to players. But Breece Hall now entering his fourth year, only 23 years old at the moment, will be 24 by the time the season starts. Your first instinct is, oh, well, it's a negative thing that Justin Fields is there. He's a running quarterback. He's going to steal touches. He's going to steal touchdowns. Well, Fields has only averaged about 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns a year so far in his career. So he's not been, like Jalen Hurts, with the tush push, getting a ton of touchdowns from Barkley and DeAndre Swift when he was there. And then you look at efficiencies of running backs with running quarterbacks, and obviously there's a difference of, someone who's maybe not quite as good versus someone like Hurts or Lamar Jackson. But oftentimes with a running quarterback, while there might be a little bit less volume, that efficiency usually goes up because defenses have to be worried about that quarterback and if they're going to run. And if there's read option, that's one less defender that's going to be keying in on your running back. So I think this is actually a good thing for Breece Hall. We know that Breece Hall is explosive. He is one of the most explosive running backs we have seen come out recently. He was a top 5% athlete at the running back position with a 4.39 40-yard dash and a 40-inch vertical. He actually compares athletically to Bijan Robinson, and Bijan ran a 4.46. So Breece Hall is extremely athletic. I know he had the knee injury 2 years ago, and he didn't look super great this year, but he was still dealing with some of those repercussions from that knee injury, even though it was a year and a half out. He was on the injury report for the last 6 games of the season with that knee injury. He did miss a game against the Miami Dolphins. But I think, hey, we're going to be a full 2 years out from that ACL injury, over 2 years out. This is going to be the healthiest Breece Hall has been since that injury. And I'm not worried about Braylon Allen, who had a season-high rushing yards of 55 last year. Breece Hall is the guy. So I'm excited about what he's going to do, especially with Justin Fields taking some of those defenders away. Breece Hall, like I said, is explosive. He had 4.2 yards per carry last year. His yards per contact after 10 still over 3, which is always a good threshold to meet. But the explosivity, he had 26 runs of 10 plus yards or more last year, Mike. That's more than he had in 2023. That knee is getting healthier. I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Breece Hall. He was the RB16 last year. I know it's a little disappointing. A lot of people drafted him to be an RB1. He averaged 15.1 points per game. The running back position as a whole was really up last year. A lot of guys just stayed healthy, which is not something we're used to at the running back position. So RB16 last year, over the past couple of years when we've seen running backs miss a lot of time, that could very easily be a top 12 running back season, averaging 15.1 points per game. So I'm excited about Breece Hall. His value is low. I know he plays for the Jets, and hey, I'm not a Jets fan. I'm not a huge believer in the Jets. I'm not blindly putting all my faith in the Jets, but I like young players who have good value. And, Breece Hall continues to kind of go down in value. I think, I'm about to talk about some of the costs, some of the trades that I saw just made today and yesterday for Breece Hall. And I think it's a really good value to go get an RB1 for your team. And I think Breece Hall can be that now that he's going to be healthy again. Some of the costs I saw, Mike, you're not ready for this. The 109 and the 312 for Breece Hall. That's easy money. I mean, you're getting a top running back. I know there's a lot of good running backs in this draft class.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of Breece Halls you can find at the 109.
Yeah, let's do that.
Another trade straight up for Rashee Rice. I'm a Rashee Rice fan, but, it's a lot easier to replace a wide receiver than it is a running back. And Xavier Worthy, though he tried to get arrested, ended up not getting arrested. So, there's still going to be some competition for Rashee Rice there.
Well, I heard that an NFL referee responded to the call and all charges were dropped.
That sounds about right. About right.
I will make that trade, though. Obviously, if my wide receiver room is good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always harder to find a running back than as a wide receiver, I will say.
Yeah.
And then the last trade I got here, James Cook and Isaac Guerrero for Breece Hall. I know James Cook had quite the season last year, and I'm a James Cook fan. But moving forward, you're going to talk about a running quarterback taking touches and touchdowns away from a running back. You're talking about Josh Allen, not Justin Fields.
That's a good point.
Give me Breece Hall. Going to be starting the season at 24 years old. He's got a lot of life left in him. For a while there was that period where, we were talking about running backs, being a one contract position. We're starting to see these second contract running backs really take off and dominate again. And that running back position, it seems to be kind of coming back around. So I'm not worried about Breece Hall being a one contract running back. I think he might even have a better part of his career once he goes to a second team. And he is going to be a free agent after this year. So I'm going to buy now and see what I can get from him this season and know that what I'm going to get from him in the future is probably going to be just as good, if not better.
Also, Breece Hall is younger than James Cook. He is 2 years younger.
Yeah.
Oddly enough.
Breece Hall's a stud, man.
He is. He really is. And look, I think it's going to get better for him. Also, breaking news, the 49ers and wide receiver DeMarcus Robinson.
Wow.
2-year deal.
Huge move.
Yeah. Goodbye, Brandon Ayuk. You got your replacement. So
I think Brandon Ayuk is a great buy right now. We're not going to talk about him tonight, but I do think Brandon Ayuk is a great buy.
I do as well. And on that same note, while Brandon Ayuk is still on the team, if you're a Ricky Pearsall fan, now might be the time to go ahead and get him if you can. I know people are still really clinging on to their Ricky Pearsall shit. It's one of those things, too. It's hard because a guy who was highly regarded by a lot of the fantasy community coming into the draft, now Deebo Samuel moves on. There's a lot of people still clinging on the hope, and they should. He came back. He obviously had that gunshot before the season. He came back doing pretty well at times. But still, if you want Ricky Pearsall, got to strike while the iron's hot now, while Brandon Ayuk is still technically on the roster. All right, so before I get into any of my picks, there is a caveat with everything that I'm doing. Right now, this time of the year, I'm looking for solid floor players with a possible high ceiling, but guys that I'm not necessarily making any huge moves right now, but are there any players that could have a good high upside that I can acquire cheaper than I should be able to? Okay. So this is why it does pay attention to what's going on. So the first guy I'm going to try to acquire is Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver George Pickens. No quarterback. No problem, Nate. I'll tell you why. He looks right now to be the number 2 wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think we could say that DK Metcalf is going to be the alpha dog there, right?
Yeah.
And as it turns out, Nate, he actually plays better when he is not the number 1 wide receiver. Now, he did miss some games this past year. Missed 3 games last year with the hamstring strain. Okay, things happen. But check out his stats. 2023 with Deontay Johnson, 68 catches, 1,190 yards, 5 touchdowns, 6.1 yak rec. He was wide receiver 29. And in 2024 without Deontay Johnson, 64 receptions, 987 yards, 4 touchdowns with only a 4.0 yak rec. He was wide receiver 42. His ADOT was roughly the same for those 2 years. Average depth of target, 13.6 in 23 and 13.9 in 24. Now there's going to be a big quarterback question mark going on there.
Yeah.
I'd say the longer that the tampering period goes, and by the time you listen to this, they could have a quarterback. I think with Justin Fields moving on, it's more likely than not that Russell Wilson comes back.
It really seems like it's going to be Russ or Rodgers, one of those two.
Man, I don't know what to say about Aaron Rodgers. If you're a Steelers fan, chime in. Let me know what you guys are thinking. You don't trade for DK Metcalf to draft a rookie quarterback and just throw him in the starting lineup. So it's most likely going to be a veteran. And that feels like a very Mike Tomlin thing to do as well. So either way, I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver too. You need wide receiver twos on your team. I think he's a solid wide receiver two on your team and in fantasy. But Nate, what does it cost to get George Pickens? Let's find out. For the 102, if you don't want to take Ted McMillan, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, whoever, Omarion Hampton, whoever it may be, you could get, in this case, George Pickens and Zay Flowers. So it's a little bit of a twofer there.
Yeah, I like this deal, especially because I don't think that this wide receiver class is especially strong in this draft class. So if you need wide receiver help on your team, this is a good way to make it happen.
I will say this about this wide receiver class. It's very top heavy. And then I think there's going to be good second to third round value guys where they may not be the biggest contributors, but they're going to be nice pieces. Like Jalen Knoll, for example, is a guy that I like, who's not going to be a first round draft pick in a rookie draft.
I do think, just real quick, I do think that this draft is a little top heavy, but the caveat to that is the wide receiver one, outside of if Travis Hunter was purely a wide receiver, outside of that, the wide receiver one in this class would be the wide receiver 4 in last year's class, behind Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Rome Odunze.
That's a really good point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Next one here, George Pickens for the 25, 212, and a 27 first. That first round pick is a few years out, and just a 212 in this year's draft. What do you think about that one, Nate?
Yeah, I think this one's fair. I don't know if I would personally do it on one of my teams.
Okay.
I feel like I can probably use those assets to get another wide receiver that I probably like more. I'm just not a big fan of the Steelers offense and the upside that it offers. But I do think it's a rather fair deal. I don't love the 212 added. I think a 27 first for Pickens is more my value, but I don't think you can get Pickens for just a 27 first. So.
Okay. And last one, George Pickens for A.D. Mitchell and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I'm not a huge George Pickens fan, just to be honest. I was coming out of college.
Yeah.
Maybe because he went to the Steelers. I don't know. I'm very cool. I'm not like a hater on George Pickens, but I'm very cool on him. I will take him in this deal.
Yeah, me too.
Though I am interested in what Deebo looks like with the Commanders. I think there is certainly some upside there, but I do think that Terry is still kind of the wide receiver one there. But someone mentioned Rondale Moore. I know you probably haven't even thought about that guy in a while.
On the Falcons, I believe.
Rondale Moore's numbers back when he was with the Cardinals, the last time that Cliff Kingsbury was there, it projected out to some pretty crazy numbers over the season if he hadn't gotten injured. And some people were saying that's what Deebo is going to be doing with the Commanders. So it'll be interesting to see how Cliff Kingsbury uses Deebo, because he loves to throw screens, and Deebo loves to catch screens. So
one other thing I forgot to mention with George Pickens too, I did say that he missed 3 games. His targets were almost the same between 23 and 24, despite missing 3 games. 106 targets in 23, 103 in 24. So that's why I'm feeling comfortable making those, the comparison between the years, despite him missing some games, because the target share was so close.
Yeah, I doubt he'll get too many more targets than that now that DK is there.
No, I don't think so either, but this is going to take a lot of coverage off him. Pat Freiermuth being back and healthy as well, that's going to help. So I kind of like it, because you got to cover DK. Nate, who's the next player that you want to buy now?
All right, I just actually mentioned him a little bit. Better than any of the wide receivers in this draft class, Rome Odunze, wide receiver for the Bears. That's another guy I want to be buying right now. His 2024 stats, let's go over it real quick. 54 receptions for 734 yards, 3 touchdowns at a 13.6 yards per catch. That also includes a 72.2% contested catch rate, Mike. 72% contested catch rate. It's honestly impressive whenever a wide receiver gets to 50% in contested catch, and you're like, oh, it's a 50-50 ball. Well, if you catch 50% of the 50-50 balls, that's actually really, really impressive, because remember, 50-50 balls are not actually 50-50 balls. They're probably more like 33 balls. Either you catch it, the defender catches it, or it's incomplete. So to get the 72% on a contested catch percentage is really impressive. And that's one of the things we knew Rome Odunze was really good at as he entered the NFL. That's something he's continued to do as he got into the NFL. Now Keenan Allen is gone, who takes 117 targets with him. 117 targets.
I didn't think he got that many targets last year.
A lot of targets last year.
Yeah.
So Rome Odunze, who already had 90-plus targets himself, steps up to be the bona fide wide receiver 2 next to DJ Moore. Caleb Williams is there, who just got 2 new guards and a new center, all who are veterans in this league and very good. He has a totally revamped offensive line, better protection for Caleb Williams, and a new head coach in the incredible offensive coordinator who we've been all obsessed with for the last couple of years, and Ben Johnson. I know we talked a lot last year about Caleb Williams walking into possibly one of the best situations that we've seen for a first-round pick. Didn't really work out that way. And a big reason for that was, number one, the head coach, who they should have fired last offseason and moved on from.
For sure.
Huge mistake by them, which we all knew at the time. But also that offensive line was terrible. So with all the moves they made with the offensive line and the fact that Keenan Allen is gone now, and we have Ben Johnson calling plays, Rome Odunze is ready to take off. Rome Odunze is easily going to go for over 1,000 yards this year. I could see at least 8 touchdowns with how he is with the contested catches in the red zone. And, DJ Moore still might be the wide receiver 1, but I think it's going to be pretty close between him and Rome Odunze. So I'm a huge fan of buying quote unquote low on Rome Odunze. I will say he's not really considered that low. I believe he's right now wide receiver, like 16 on keep trade cuts. So, he's not that far down the dynasty ranks. People are not totally forgetting about him. But you remember buying low on JSN last year around this time?
Yeah, for sure.
That worked out quite well. Now, JSN around this time last year, I did check it. He was about wide receiver like 22, 24 on keep trade cuts. So he was a bit lower in market value compared to Rome Odunze. But Mike, once again, I went and looked at the rankings and the trades made recently, and Rome Odunze is a really good value right now. And real quick before I get to the costs, there's a discrepancy right now between draft picks and the players in this draft. Okay, so real quick, let me give you one of the costs, and then I'll come back to this point I'm making. So one of the trades I saw just today for Rome Odunze was the 111 and the 208. Okay, so a very late first-round pick and a late-ish second-round pick. Let's just combine that and say it's about the 109, right? About the value of the 109 is Rome Odunze, according to this single trade, which
when you're combining the value of those 2 picks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You might not be able to make it happen for the 109 in your league, but it happened in this league. I'm taking it, at that value. At the 109, you're picking up the 3rd best wide receiver in this draft class, maybe. And meanwhile, on keep trade cut, the highest ranked wide receiver in this draft class, because they've already added rookies, is Ted McMillan, who is currently 1 spot behind Rome Odunze. So there's this discrepancy where if Ted McMillan is the same ranking as Rome Odunze, then Rome Odunze should be worth the 103 or 104. But if his value is sitting more around a late first, a mid to late first, there's this discrepancy, especially in a wide receiver class we just talked about that isn't super strong. This is the chance to go get a guy that we know is, capable, 734 yards in his rookie year with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore ahead of him in a banged up offensive line with a rookie quarterback. I'd say that's pretty impressive. And like we said earlier, Rome Odunze would be the wide receiver 1 in this draft class. He's a great target right now, especially if you can move a mid to late first round pick for him.
I like it.
I love it. Another trade I saw, a 26 first, just straight up a 26 first for Rome Odunze. That is absolutely easy money. I would do that 8 days of the week.
Yeah, I'll do
another trade here. Mike, I do want your opinion on this one. Straight up for Sam Darnold.
It's really team dependent to me. You're not going to get most likely as good of a wide receiver in this class as you will as Rome Odunze. On the flip side, you may not get as good of a quarterback in this class, depending on landing spots, of course, as Sam Darnold. Do you know if this was this a super flex or a 1 quarterback trade?
Flex, yeah.
This was a super flex trade. I'm okay with it on both sides. This is most likely somebody picking up Sam Darnold last year before the season when he was not on a team just taking a flyer, playing some waivers, which is why it's important to play waivers in the offseason, by the way. I still think personally, just because of the positional value of the quarterback in Superflex leagues, it should be Sam Darnold for Rome Odunze plus just a little bit of something. But I'm okay with the trade.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Now,
Well,
I do want to say one thing, because you make a really good point here. And I think what it boils down to with Rome Odunze is we expect these guys that we have, we, the fantasy community, and especially a lot of analysts and a lot of players too, we all do it. These are high value prospects. We expect them to come in right away. You were a first round pick, you're over 1,000 yards. So we can make the case where, look, if Rome Odunze is a buy, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. should be able to buy right now as well. Guys like that, because when you look at Marvin Harrison Jr. versus this rookie class, we're looking at it differently again. So, maybe kick the tires on some Marvin Harrison Jr. as well.
Good call.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Every cup of Nespresso coffee is an invitation to transform your morning routine into a ritual you can treasure each and every day. Using the Virtuo Pup, a simple touch of the button freshly brews bold aromas and a rich, velvety crema layer for delicious cafe-quality coffee at home. Whether you enjoy your coffee hot or over ice, every sip, every morning is unforgettable. Nothing tastes like Nespresso coffee. Visit Nespresso.com or our app to explore our full range of easy-to-use machines and coffees not found anywhere else.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was getting frustrated by your forms. Now, Taxes is uploading your forms with a snap, and a TurboTax expert will do your taxes for you. One who's backed by the latest tech, which cross-checks millions of data points for absolute accuracy, all of which makes it easy for you to get the most money back, guaranteed. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
Nate, let's get back into it. I extrapolated for this one. But the Chargers have a new running back, and it's Najee Harris. He signed as I was filling out the show sheet last night. So thank you, Najee, because I said it looked like he was heading to Los Angeles, and now he is. Here's the thing about Najee. Over 1,000 yards every year in his career. Okay, is it always pretty? No. But I will say one thing about Najee Harris. This is going to sound weird, but just hear me out. A better quarterback is going to help a running back. When you have a quarterback that's more likely to throw the ball down the field, the defense has to adjust accordingly, blah, blah, blah. Check it out. From his rookie season to last year, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1,034 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1,035 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1,043 yards, 6 touchdowns. But he's also never missed a game due to injury. And in that 4-year span, for a guy that's as big as him, not known as a receiving back, 1,149 career receiving yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. So he's not a liability in the passing game either.
Not at all.
Of his career, 4,399 yards, Nate, 3,274 of those have been after contact. So he has been fighting for a lot of yardage. Okay. Justin Herbert's going to be an upgrade. I talked about this a minute ago over some of the quarterbacks he's played with in Pittsburgh, which include Russell Wilson. This isn't prime Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson. Justin Fields. Justin Fields played pretty good for the Steelers last year, so you might want to take him off this list if you want. Then we got Kyle Allen, Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett, Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, and a very, very aging Ben Roethlisberger. Remember his last year? That was rough to watch.
He was not a threat to throw down the field at all.
No, not at all. Now, for his fantasy outlook, here's my extrapolating. J.K. Dobbins, who's a free agent, and Gus Edwards, who I believe is still under contract, combined last year for...
Yep.
He's not?
They dropped him.
They dropped him. And Gus Edwards, who is a free agent, combined last year, and I didn't put Kamani Vidal into this because I know Najee Harris won't get all of the carries. Plus, Kamani didn't do that much, but whatever. 296 carries, 1,270 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Through the air, 35 receptions, 159 yards, and 0 touchdowns. Most of that was J.K. Dobbins, by the way. That's 255.9 fantasy points in a full PPR format and 15 fantasy points per game. That would have landed him, if we could replicate this, which I think he's capable of doing, at running back 10 on the season overall and running back 18 based on fantasy points per game. However, I do see him as a high-end running back too. This offense is going to be going through some changes. As much as I'm not a Harbaugh fan, I think what he's doing out there is fantastic. They need some wide receiver help. Josh Palmer goes to the Buffalo Bills. I like that move for the Bills, by the way. Palmer can play inside, outside. He'll probably play outside. Keon Coleman on the outside. Josh Palmer, Khalil Shakir. It's not terrible. You got Dalton Kincaid.
It's such a Buffalo Bills wide receiver room. Just a bunch of dudes that they're just not really going to use any of them in any like large capacity. It's just like one of them will catch them, and then we'll throw it to the other guy the next time. And it's like, it's interesting.
Yeah. But look, they need to do something. The Chargers do in free agency for their wide receiver room and Justin Herbert. The tight end, their starting tight end is Will Dissly. They do have Hayden Hurst. But look at this. Lad McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and DJ Chark are listed as starters right now.
DJ Chark, man, I haven't heard that guy's name in a while.
There's a reason why. Behind them, you got Jalen Reagor, Simi Fehoko, Darius Davis, and Brendan Rice still hanging out. So the Chargers need to upgrade their wide receiving core. Hey, Keenan Allen's looking for a job, for the record. So
that's true.
I do think Najee Harris could be an asset to both the Los Angeles Chargers and your fantasy team. High-end running back, too. What's it cost to get him? Now, these trades happened yesterday, okay? All my trades were sourced on March 10th. That's when I did this. I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to update it today, but still, the value is going to be, might be a little bit worse. You get it. A 26 fourth and a 27 second for starting running back.
I'm a huge fan of Najee Harris going to the Chargers. I don't know if I'm willing to pay up to a late first, but I'm pretty close to that. Like, certainly I'd be willing to pay like an early second, mid-second. So this deal, absolutely. And just because you said something about, the value, it's going to be a little bit different now that he actually signed. But, when you pulled these last night, there were already plenty of rumors that he was going to the Chargers.
Yeah.
So the writing was kind of on the wall. I think, you projected him for 296 carries, 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns when you pulled Dobbins and Edwards together. I can absolutely see Najee Harris taking 300 carries. I think that's very realistic, especially with his durability. And the Jim Harbaugh offense is going to be run through the run game. I love this signing. I think Najee Harris will continue to be one of the best values this entire offseason until we get to redraft season. And all the redraft people will come in and be like, yeah, that's obviously a guy I want. And all the Dynasty people will be like, oh, yeah, that's right. I do want a guy like Najee Harris who's going to score a lot of fantasy points.
Yeah, get him now. Next one, the 25-209 and a 26 third.
Yeah. I'm very about it.
I'm okay with that one, too. Here's one that's a little harder. Derrick Henry for Najee Harris, Zay Flowers, and the 25-202.
I'm okay with this. I love me some Derrick Henry. I think Najee Harris can give you 80% of that production. So getting Zay Flowers and the 202 on top of it, I'm definitely okay with that. Mike, I want to add one more trade to your costs. And I actually have a trade post Chargers signing for you.
Please.
It was not a trade by me, but it was a trade by a friend of the podcast, the Fantasy Gazette. I'm in a group chat that includes the Fantasy Gazette. And he went ahead and bought himself some Najee Harris last night, a couple minutes after the signing. He paid the 207, the 301, and the 409. So the 207, the 301, and the 409 for Najee Harris.
All this year?
All this year. So a mid-second, an early third, and a late fourth.
Yeah, I mean, I would gladly do that.
Me as well. The Fantasy Gazette, I know you listen. You have our blessing.
Which Fantasy Gazette is it? The Viking or the tall one?
The tall one.
Okay, very good.
It's the only Fantasy Gazette these days, just so you know.
Check it out. I'm wearing the shirt. All right, Nate, I think you got one more here, and then I got one more, and then we're going to call it a night.
All right. So kind of worried about doubling up on Jets players because they have not really treated us super, super well over the past couple of years, and they haven't really had a great offense for quite a while. But like I said earlier, I like young players, young, good players, and when the prices decrease and become better values, I'm about that. So I want to talk about Garrett Wilson, who's now going to be the wide receiver for Justin Fields. And if you didn't know, they did play in college together, and they performed pretty well together. But not just Garrett Wilson performing well with Justin Fields. What if I took you back to 2023 when DJ Moore became a Chicago Bear and Justin Fields was the quarterback?
Oh.
Do you remember what happened? DJ Moore had a wide receiver 6 finish, Mike.
Oh.
He had a career year.
Can't throw.
Oh, how about it? Everyone's like, oh, no, Justin Fields with the Jets, Garrett Wilson. Oh, no. Okay. I mean, DJ Moore had a career year in 2023. So if you're telling me you're sad that Justin Fields went to the Jets and Garrett Wilson, who, let me tell you the stat, 469 targets over his first 3 years, which is the second most all time through a player's first 3 years, only behind Justin Jefferson. And Alan Lazard's allowed to have a trade now. Devontae Adams is gone, and he's no longer Aaron Rodgers' best friend. Okay, Garrett Wilson's going to continue to get a frick ton of targets. I'm pretty excited about how this might end up. Let me go over DJ Moore's 2023 just so you can see what could happen for Garrett Wilson in 2025 with Justin Fields as his quarterback and Garrett Wilson as Justin Fields' wide receiver 1. In 2023, DJ Moore had 132 targets, third most of his career. And second most at that time. He did have some more targets this past year. 96 receptions, career high at the time. And then he had 98 just this past year. 1,364 yards, career high, still standing. 8 touchdowns, career high, still standing. 2.31 yards per route run, career high, still standing. Look at that efficiency. 555 yards after the catch, a career high at the time. Ended up having 596 yards in 2024 after the catch. But that was with the Bears offense with Caleb Williams and a terrible offensive line where they threw a ton of screens. And I can tell you that that is the reason he had more yak than in 2023 because his ADOT in 2024 was 7.3. That's a pretty low number for a wide receiver when his ADOT in 2023 with Fields was 11.9. So you could actually say that Justin Fields was a better quarterback for DJ Moore than Caleb Williams. Yeah. So I am not at all worried about Justin Fields going to the Jets, other than the fact that, hey, I don't know what they're doing at quarterback. If they bring in somebody else, they draft a quarterback, we can have this conversation again about what the quarterback situation looks like for Garrett Wilson. But Garrett Wilson has already gone through some pretty terrible quarterback situations and has performed pretty well. He's been, a top 25 wide receiver for his first 2 years. This past year finished as the wide receiver 10. A wide receiver 10 was a wide receiver 1. And it's like no one cares.
Yeah.
It's like no one cares. You have a very young, very talented wide receiver finished as a wide receiver 10, and his value doesn't really increase. And he did that with a terrible offense. And he's, like I said, has the second most targets of anyone ever through 3 years. I don't know why we don't care about Garrett Wilson all of a sudden. I certainly do. Currently wide receiver 14 on Keep Trade Cut, down 7 spots since over the last 6 months. He was wide receiver 7 just 6 months ago. You guys can all be down on him. I'm going to go pick up some Garrett Wilson for the cheapest that he has been since he's entered the league. And I'm pretty excited about what we can get out of him and Justin Fields. And this is another guy that, I was speaking about it earlier with Breece Hall. If it doesn't work out with the Jets, he's going to be a free agent next year. Garrett Wilson, I believe he has another year after this because he was a first-round pick, and I didn't confirm it, but I I can all but confirm that they picked up his 5th-year option. So he's going to be there for, a little bit longer. But Garrett Wilson, man, he's been just fine playing with Zach Wilson and, all the other quarterbacks that they've thrown back there. So give me Garrett Wilson with Justin Fields. He could be a wide receiver 1 again. And if not, he's going to be a very strong wide receiver 2, who is only finishing up his 4th season after this year. You'll be very happy to have Garrett Wilson. Go pick him up now for some lower prices. And let me tell you about those lower prices, Mike.
Nate, before you do, you did say that they were teammates at Ohio State. In case you're wondering, they played 2 years together. It was 2019 and 2020. Those 2 years, Garrett Wilson was not the bona fide starter. They combined in those 2 years for 73 catches, 1,155 yards, and 11 touchdowns. 21 was his breakout year when he had 70 receptions for 1,058 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Good stuff. All right, here's the cost for Garrett Wilson. I can't believe these trades. You couldn't have got this done just last year at this time when he was going to be playing with a who knows how old Aaron Rodgers coming off of a torn Achilles. Straight up, Xavier Worthy. Trade completed today. That's a no-brainer, I think. Mike? Yeah, no-brainer. Jerry Jeudy in the 110. I think this is a bit more fair, especially with Jerry Jeudy's breakout at the end of the season. But who's the Browns quarterback, Mike? I don't know.
Well, I did see a rumor today that it says Kirk Cousins could be a Brown by the end of the week.
I did hear that, especially with Stefanski previously being with the Vikings. There's a connection there.
I would feel more comfortable about Jerry Jeudy if Kirk Cousins was the starting quarterback. But I guess right now, Deshaun Watson's still rehabilitating. If the season started tomorrow, it would be Kenny Pickett.
Super Bowl champion.
Kenny Pickett. Hey, man, how cool is it, though? You win a Super Bowl with your favorite team growing up. It's pretty cool. Yeah. But I'd still rather have Garrett Wilson.
Absolutely. And then I got another package for you here, Mike. George Kittle and James Cook for Garrett Wilson and Tucker Kraft.
Oh. I mean, you're trading a potential top 5 tight end and an RB1 for a wide receiver 1 and a tight end 1. I think it's pretty fair.
I'll say it's rather fair.
Yeah, I mean,
the Wilson side.
I don't know. Yeah, I would slightly lean that side. Kittle's aging. James Cook gets a lot of touchdowns vultured. Yeah,
Tucker Kraft played pretty well. I love me some George Kittle. I'm definitely higher on George Kittle than most of the community because he continues to just be great. And I mean, they just got rid of Debo, and last time, whenever Debo's injured, George Kittle goes off. So I think George Kittle has a lot of potential this year. But Tucker Kraft played pretty well himself this past year. So
also, I saw that Daniel Jones's contract is 1 year, $14 million. That brings his career earnings to $114,256,000.
Yeah, that's good for Danny boy.
Just my goodness.
The NFL money is insane. Someone asked me, how's Josh Palmer getting $12 million a year? Darius Slayton getting $12 million a year. How are these quote-unquote mid-wide receivers getting $12 million a year? Well, it's the fact that guys at the top of the wide receiver position are going to be receiving 35, 40, who knows, even more money than that a year. So when you look at it like that, and then just, 10 years ago, these same guys would have got $4 or $6 million. It's just the position as a whole has just took off.
Just to clarify, the New York Giants paid Darius Slayton 3 years, $36 million, but they would not pay 3 years, $38 million for Saquon Barkley.
Resources probably could have been spent better, but good on Barkley. He didn't need to spend any more time there in New York.
No, I mean, look, it worked out better for my favorite team. Not necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know if it worked out better for the Giants.
No, it didn't. But, I'm hoping the Giants figure it out because I see a lot of Giants games here in Eastern Pennsylvania. It's not an easy watch. Let's go to my last player to buy now. Again, digging a little deeper here. Well, not deeper, but just value-wise. And that's Chicago Bears. What?
Breaking news once again. Kenny Gainwell is finalizing a 1-year deal with the Steelers.
Okay, great. I knew they weren't going to bring him back. You could find a Kenny Gainwell in this draft. RJ Harvey, you're an Eagle.
Aren't you really scared of the backfield of Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell?
Do the Steelers have anybody under contract to be their starting quarterback?
I believe Chris Boswell put a tweet out today of him throwing a football. So,
that's helpful.
Bring back Duck Hodges.
They have no one under contract as of right now.
Oh. Aaron Rodgers and Jackson Dart then.
Now I'm interested if that's the case. But let's go to the Windy City, Chicago. Let's go grab tight end Cole Kmet. He's going to be entering the second year of Caleb Williams' tenure. He did have his worst statistical season since his rookie year last year. 47 catches, 474 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's 10.1 yards per reception. For reference, his rookie year, 28 for 243 and 2. He's solid health-wise. He's played in every game and every season. Now, if you look at it, he only played 16 games in 2020, Mike. They went to the 17-game season in 2021 for the record. Okay, so, yeah. His yak record leaves a little bit to be desired. 4.5. He's a tight end. He's not the fastest guy. Does have a 53.8 contested catch percentage and only 10 drops in 5 seasons, Nate. Half of those drops came in 2021 when he had 5. He did have 3 games last season with 0 targets and 3 games with only 1 target. So we're talking 6 total games where he had 3 total targets. I think that changes this year. I think he's
17 targets leaving with Keenan Allen.
That is true.
Over the middle of the field, too.
Yeah, I think he's a solid tight end, too. Maybe not a high-end tight end, too, but a solid tight end, too. A guy that you could rely on if you need a flex play in a pinch, a bye-week fill-in. You have a lot of injuries. Nobody wants to make a deal. All right, but what does it cost to get a player like Cole Kmet, who, if you recall, a lot of people were high on the fantasy community when he came out? It might cost you this one. I don't know where to go on this one, but it might cost you Pat Freiermuth. I think I want Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, I want Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, I do.
Even though I don't know who the quarterback is going to be.
He's that good. It doesn't matter. It might cost you the new running back 1 in Dallas, Javonte Williams, for Cole Kmet and a 26th third. All in.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't think Javonte Williams on a $3 million deal is going to necessarily be the RB1. You know, I'm expecting them to draft somebody, quite honestly, but I don't know what they're doing down there in Dallas the last couple of years. Or even, I think like their last free agent signing that they had that was actually like large is like over a decade ago. So I don't know.
It was. I don't know. We thought they were going to draft a running back last year too.
We did. Luckily, they just stuck with Rico, and that was much better.
Sure. Dontavian Wicks in the 25-401 for Cole Kmet.
Sure. Wicks can't catch the ball.
That is true. He can't. And if you recall, when we scouted him, that was my biggest flaw about him. Wide receiver that can't catch the ball. Now
he's open, can't catch the ball.
He was pretty good for a while, though. It looked like that problem had been solved, but then just tapered off again. And last one, threw another one on here, a 27th third.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Cole Kmet, I think he could be a good value for you guys. Buy him coming off his second worst season ever. Hopefully the value goes up. You could start him. You could trade him for more. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, I used to be a much bigger Cole Kmet fan. I had a lot of Cole Kmet when he came into the league. Actually, I sold a lot of Cole Kmet before last year, which worked out really well.
It did,
because he had a really good year the year before last. Unfortunately, he didn't have quite as good of a year this past year. For these prices, I might be willing to buy back in, and that works out pretty well for me.
The old Shane Manila trick. Go rebuy a player you just sold.
Luckily, I can do it within 2 years. So
that is true. All right, so a little bit longer tonight, but we had some good discussion in there. Thank you for hanging out with us. Hey, draft day is coming up. Check out our store. Link is down below. Patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. We do a week for free on us. So until next time, everybody, for Nate, I'm Mike. Thank you for listening.